right. So moving on here, categories. Okay, categories. This now, okay, so now we're moving into like what Ableton actually has to offer. And in under the category section under sounds, Ableton tries to group these things together into kind of almost vague-ish terms with when it comes to like, hey, maybe you want to just check out some basses and you want to see what Ableton has to offer for basses. So I can click on this drop-down menu, and the cool thing is that I can preview any one of these bass sounds. Okay. Now, one thing that we teach at the Garnish music production school, if you were to take a lesson with us, is we go over these extensions, like, because that's something that's actually really important to understand. Again, I'm not going to go over in detail all the extensions right now, but the extensions will let you know whether it's an Ableton device or if it's an Ableton group or if it's just an AIFF or a waveform. There's other extensions as well, but the cool thing is that as I scroll through these, just using my down arrow key, I can preview all of these sounds. Okay, so there's a lot of options here to get you started if you're not sure where you want to start. Like, hey, keep it simple. Maybe start with just a piano, a grand piano sound, or an old school kind of Rhodes key sound, you know. Okay. And then under here, this is another category that Ableton's put together for you to get going, to get started. And there's a bunch of different options for drums. So if you want to check out some of the drum kits that come with Ableton, this is a preview of what's in that drum kit. This is not necessarily a loop where you can just drag this in and think you're going to get this entire loop. No, it's basically a preview to show you, hey, these sounds are actually in this loop, and you can use them individually to create your own rhythmic ideas. Okay. And by the way, there are a lot. You see what I mean? Look, I'm still scrolling. This is why I have this collections folder. Now, some of you might be looking at your collection and you might say like, wait a minute, I don't have as many as you do. Okay, what's the deal here? Something to keep in mind is that I've been building my collections over time. So some of these I have in here might have been packs that I've purchased. By default, when you first download the suite, it takes a little while to install all these packs. So you might not see them right away on your system, but also don't feel bad if you're like, I don't have as many. In fact, to me, this is a problem. I feel like I have way too many. I guess it's a good problem to have, but yeah, over time, your collections will start to get bigger if you want them to be. So yeah, you're not missing out if you feel like I have more than what you're looking at currently, and maybe you have more than me. So I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Instruments. The instruments panel. This is a great area to really dive into the world of MIDI. Okay, and when I talk about MIDI, I'm talking about able to actually in real time use a tactile device, whether you're using a push or if you're using your own piano keyboard and you want to get into sound design, if you want to get into synthesis, if you wanted to load up some custom drum kits, if you wanted to load up some samples and chop them up like you would on a Kai MPC, these are the instruments. This is where this lives. And in the Ableton course, we go over all these different instruments. Okay. Underneath that, we have audio effects. In Ableton, there are a lot of different audio effects. Now, some of these audio effects are definitely more for modulation to your sound. So if you wanted to, you know, add delay or add reverb or add saturation, if you want to make something sound brighter, or you want to make something sound darker, okay? Effects, those types of effects live in here, but there's also different types of effects that don't necessarily affect your sound. And what do I mean by that? For example, there's one called Ableton Tuner, and the tuner is not an effect where it's again going to modulate or change your audio loop or your vocal, but it's a way to maybe tune your guitar. So if you wanted to make sure your guitar's tuned, or your ukulele, whatever the case may be, you would turn your attention to the audio effects and grab something like the tuner. So there's different types of effects when it comes to mixing and mastering. There's effects for adding dynamics to your tracks, like adding compressors and things like that. And then there's effects to make things sound different, to give a different result. Those are like the reverbs and delays and saturations and overdrives and things like that. And then there's the utility effects where you might have something called a spectrum analyzer. So you can actually analyze the frequencies, you can analyze the pitch, you can analyze the amplitude, and then and yeah, so there's all different types of effects in here. And again, that's something that we definitely dive into in the Ableton course at Garnish. Okay, and then next we have MIDI effects. MIDI effects in here, again, these are exclusively, well, these are effects, but they're exclusively for MIDI. So if you're working with MIDI tracks, this is where those would live. Max for Live, this company, this partnership that Ableton has put together with Cycling 74, Max for Live, another great way to explore different types of audio effects, different types of instruments, and different types of MIDI effects. So there's a lot to work with. Down here, this is the plugins folder. This is where you would find your audio units. Okay, this is where you would find your VSTs. If you recall earlier when we were looking in the preferences, I mentioned that if you wanted to scan or if you want to see your third-party VSTs, whether, let's say you're downloading something from Sound Toys or Native Instruments or Serum, you know, something like that, Vital, all those things, they all live in here. Okay, clips, this is another form of Ableton to allow you to preview maybe some clips or some loops that you might want to use. The extension ALC, Ableton Live Clips. So some of these might be actual audio loops, some of these might actually be MIDI loops, and some of these could even be potentially MIDI instruments. All right. And then samples, this would actually be all of my samples, whether I downloaded some samples from third-party sources to sample packs my friend might have gave me, or I downloaded from the internet, to what's available in Ableton's full suite, all live right here.